Hello there, and thanks so much for joining me for another tutorial. I'm Erin Eno, and today we're going to be painting this fun, misty wildflower meadow. It's really simple, really fun if you like to see watercolor bleeds and soft blends, and we're only using 2 colors. So grab your paints and let's get started. Today I'm using my Fabriano Artistico watercolor block. It is 100% cotton and I have the extra white block, and it is 7 by 10. I'm only painting on half of it today though. We're just gonna be working on this half. I have a jar of water and a paper towel. I have my Royal Talons Van Gogh paints in my palette, and I have 3 Princeton Neptune brushes. They're all round. I have one in a size 12, one in a size 8, and one in a size 4. And just in case my size 4 isn't small enough, I also have a couple of Princeton snaps on hand, one in a size 2 and one in a size 0. So let's just jump in and get started. And this is so simple and a lot of fun. And all we have to do is just start with clean water. This is why I have my Princeton Neptune size 12, because I'm just going to do a wash over the entire sheet. You can use any large brush or any wash brush that you have. Just make sure it's covered entirely, just with a light sheen. You don't want it too drenched, because we're going in with wet on wet, and I don't want it getting too crazy wet and pooling. Okay, so it should just have a nice sheen on it, nice even sheen, and hopefully you can see that. I can see a couple spots that I missed, so just quickly touch those up. Okay, and I'm going to go in with my size 8 now. Actually, you know what? No, yeah, I'm going to go in with my size 8, and I'm just going to start with just rose, which is just a nice light pink color. I like this color because when you use it saturated, it's still a light pink. It doesn't get like really ridiculously vivid, and that's what I want. So I'm just going to go and start applying this all along the bottom, like so. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tip my sheet, and I'm going to start to coax this down just with some water. Now I'm not adding any more paint. I'm just adding water at this point, okay? Because I don't want it heavily pink right up to the top, okay? We want it to fade out to almost white. In fact, that's still a little dark. I'm just going to tap some of that up and bring that fade down. Just like that. And you want to make sure that you keep it wet the whole time throughout this whole painting. So while that's still wet, I'm actually going to tap in a little bit more, because I don't want it an even bleed. I want some of it to bleed a little higher up in some areas. I don't want it necessarily straight across. Okay, so we have a little more pink coming down this area. And then while that's still wet, I'm going to just put this brush aside, and I'm going to take my size 4 brush, and I'm going to wet it, but I'm going to tap off the excess water onto my paper towel, and I'm just going to start flicking some of this pink up, just in quick little wisps. And don't worry that you're getting light spots there. They'll kind of settle in and dissipate a bit. And I actually don't want that many little lines of pink, so I'm just going to tap some of them up I'm actually going to try and see and go in with some pink on my brush, just on the very tip, like so. Okay, now I'm going to go in, back in with that size 8, and we're going to go in and get some indigo, just straight up indigo. We're not mixing anything, we're just using 2 colors. I'm going to tap the excess water off on my brush, and I'm going to start putting some indigo all in along the bottom, like so. And that's going to bleed out as well. I want it quite heavy at the bottom, so I'm going to tap in like full on pigment, hardly watered down at all. Okay. I'm going to clean off my brush. Just tap a little bit of the water off on a paper towel, and I'm going to start coaxing this color down, just to have this bleed into the pink a bit. I'm going to tap some down here, just so again, just so that's not like a straight across bleed of the blue, just like we did for the pink. And I'm going to go in, tap even more in the corners. Now we may get some blooms in there, and if we do, we'll just kind of soften those out later. And I'm getting a little bit of a hard edge on that pink now there, because I went in with more water, so I want to just kind of soften that out without disturbing too much of it. And again, we're going to go in with this size 4 and start just flicking some of that up, just with the tip of my brush. And if it gets too heavy, like it is here, just tap a little bit of it up. Then I'm just going to tap in a little more straight indigo in the bottom corners, because I want it really dark down there. And I want to just kind of soften up some of these edges here. And if you get blooms in some areas, it's perfectly okay, because this is it is abstract. And I do find that this brush is a little big and holds a little too much water to get those lines that I want. So I'm just gonna go to my size 0. And maybe I'll go in and try to get a couple of those little pink lines in as well. Okay, so that's that. And now that when this is still wet, we're going to go back to our number 4, and I'm going to get a little bit of that indigo just on the tip of my brush. And we're actually, you know what? That's not wet anymore. I'm going to have to wet this up here, because whatever we put in now, we want it to soften and bleed out. So I'm just going to put some water back in here just to make sure it's all good and wet. And you'll see I'm blurring those lines, and that's perfectly okay. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with my number 4, some indigo, and we're just going to start tapping in some little flowers. well, little dots. They're not really flowers yet, but they're going to bloom out and look like flowers. Just with the tip of your brush, don't hold your brush on your paper too long. We're just tapping in a few here and there. And make sure you tap some down in this area as well. We don't want them all up in the lighter area. And we're going to do the same with the pink. Okay, so my brush is wet but not sopping wet, and we're just going to tap in some pink flowers now. Just really lightly. Oh, that area clearly wasn't wet, so I'm just going to nudge it with my brush. Same with this area here. That's why it's getting a hard edge there. And same thing, we want to tap some down here as well. Maybe a couple here. Maybe I'll get a little bit of a more watered down version. But you know what? I think that might be enough. I'm going to try to get a few more dark blue ones in, just so it's not watered down quite as much as the first flowers, and just kind of heavy up some of the flowers that are kind of buried down there. We'll give that a try with the pink too, fully pigmented. So it's not watered down at all. And this one needs to bleed out just a titch. Okay, so now that we've got that, I'm just going to clean these brushes up. I'm going to go to my size 0. And even if you have a brush with a really fine tip on it, really fine point, you want a small brush because you don't want to go in with a brush that's going to lay down too much water, okay? So I'm getting a watered down version of that pink. I'm going to tap the excess water off on my paper towel, and I'm just going to go in and do these kind of stems going up to the pink. And I'm doing pink stems to the pink flowers, and I'm going to do blue stems to the blue flowers. Get a really watered down version just for these guys up here. You don't even have to do stems to those top ones if you don't want. I don't think I wanted to do that. I don't like what happened there. See, even this brush had so much water on it. I'm gonna see if I can kind of fix that up a bit with some indigo. Soften that out a bit. Just kind of flick. I'm doing this with a dry brush because I don't want to cause more blooms. Actually, you know what? To create some interest, let's throw some blooms in here. Let's throw a bloom in there. See if this is dry enough or wet enough to bloom. It's probably not. You can throw some in here. That's what I like about abstract. You can kind of just toss blooms in wherever you want. I don't know how much that's going to spread out though, because it was pretty heavily pigmented, but we'll let it sit and see what happens. This one may not work because it was kind of dry, but just tap it up and you've made a manual bloom. So now I'm going to go in with the indigo. I'm going to start with a really watered down version. And we're going to do some stems to these blue flowers. That wasn't quite watered down enough. Let me water it right down. Okay, so it's pretty watered down, but I've taken the excess off, and I'm gonna go this way. I just find my hand kind of has a lighter touch if I go from the top to the bottom. And you can use heavier pigment as you get down into the deeper areas where the blue is. Okay. We'll do one come down off this guy. And I think I want to heavy up some of the pink ones just a titch. Actually, let me see how dark that is. Yeah, that'll be okay. And like I said, if it is too dark, you can just tap it up lightly with your paper towel. And now that these flowers are kind of dryish, we're going to go in with deep indigo. And we're just going to tap in some centers. And they're going to be darker on the darker flowers. Just if they're too dark, you can tap them up. When we get into the lighter flowers, we're just going to go with more of a wash. Okay, so it's a little more watered down, but I don't want a lot on my brush. And we're just going to tap those because we still want those to look kind of misty. And we're going to do the same thing with the pink. So heavily pigmented for some of these flowers at the bottom, like so. A little lighter wash for some of the flowers that are more in the mist. And I don't worry if it's a little too heavy because your paper towel can always remedy that. Okay. And I see one little area that could use some help with the stem, and that's this little guy right here. Didn't need to be that heavy, but. And maybe this guy right here. I'm not real thrilled about this one. I'm just gonna not pick it up, but just kind of soften it out a little bit. Just like that, just so it gets a little more lost. And I'll just tap in a little bit more indigo. Soften that edge a little bit. I think I just want to heavy up a couple more stems. Okay, so I'm just using the very tip of my brush. I can actually make it a little deeper when it gets down into this indigo area. Like so. And I think what I want to do, you know what I want to try? I think I'm going to try to mix a little bit of indigo with this pink and see what that looks like in the center of these pink flowers. That might be a little too purple. A little more pink. And maybe water it down just a titch and see what that looks like. I kind of like that. It's a little more contrast. I'm just going to soften it a bit with my paper towel. Just a little bit. Those ones aren't cooperating. I'm just going to soften it with some water instead. That might work better. So you get to see my trial and errors with these. And then for the couple of blue ones we have, we'll just tap in a little stronger pigment. I'm still just using the plain indigo for the blue ones. Like so. And I think I'll do the same thing. Rather than tap it up with my paper towel, just kind of soften one edge. I don't want to put too much water on there, so I'm using my size 0 because I don't want to have it bleed out on me. And I'm not liking what's happening here. I'm going to re-wet this and tap in some more pink. Like so. And while I'm in there, maybe do a little stem off that guy. Okay, so now I'm just flicking in a few last minute stems on some of these lower flowers. I'm just going to tap a little of that purple in the middle of this guy. Kind of missed that one. Oops. Didn't mean to do that. And that blue is still fading out really light. I don't want to overdo it, and I'm being cautious, and then next thing I know, you're not really seeing the centers on the little blue flowers. I just didn't want to go in so dark right out of the gate. Okay. But I think that should do it. Just kiss it a little bit with a little bit of water. Now I'm going to completely dry those to see that they are the deepness that I want. And I think I want to see if I can lighten this blue. This could be very dangerous, but I kind of want to lighten this blue and have it run up a little bit, but I don't know. I may end up ruining this, but you know what? Let's give it a shot. So I'm just gonna, the thing about this Fabriano paper is it lifts very easily. So I don't want to kind of disturb it, but I want to lay some water on top. And then just go in with a little bit more indigo and have that run down a bit right off the page. And hopefully I won't get a weird edge where I re-wet it. So I'm going to dry that with my heat tool and see if I've done damage there or not. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to go in with a little bit of a dry brush and just flick some of this up. That's a little better. That's the beauty of abstract. They're very forgiving. So now I'm going to dry this, just make sure I didn't get that wonky edge, and then we'll take the tape off. Okay, so I didn't get too bad of a weird edge there, so we'll take the tape off and look at our finished painting. And there you go. There are our Misty abstract wildflowers. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and that you found it helpful. And I really hope you give this a try. And like I always say, if you do and you're on Instagram, please share your work there and tag me so I can have a look. That's it for today. Thanks so much for joining me and for supporting my channel. Take care, and I'll see you next time.